Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. A wave of liquidity is coming for XRP, and why do I say that? Well, multiple reasons. I've been reporting in recent weeks especially, and I've been talking about a fair bit throughout the year, at least from time to time, that there are lots of reputable analysts who are fully anticipating for a ton of different reasons for there to be a notable uptick in global liquidity. And certainly it is the case that as liquidity increases, dollars got to get put somewhere, and so a lot of that ends up getting shoved into the stock market and the crypto asset class. And the more money is available, sometimes you'll see it's going to make people act in a certain way, the speculator class, and they will invest further out onto the risk curve. That's how you get investors willing to invest in the Russell 2000 small cap stocks. It's how you get investors who maybe in crypto they feel more comfortable just putting money into Bitcoin, for example. Maybe they go further out the risk curve and they get into other large caps, mid caps, and small caps. And so as liquidity increases, those are the types of behaviors that we have historically seen. I'm going to share with you perspective from an analyst who says we're actually starting to see an uptick in liquidity, and he's specifically referencing Bitcoin. But my friends, this will flow through, especially if you consider the macro factors. There's plenty of reason to believe that this is going to flow through to the entire crypto asset class, including XRP, which I will endlessly continue to argue, since it is part of the crypto asset class. When the rising tides lifts all boats, XRP will be one of those boats. Okay, it's a boat in the water, right? It's the silliest idea to think that XRP will be like, no, I'm going to sit on the sidelines for this one. I see that argument all the time. It does not compute to me. That does not make sense. XRP has had plenty of time to consolidate. It has legal clarity. And if you want to talk about fundamentals, my God, it's one of the few cryptocurrencies that's actually used for something. That should matter, certainly for the long haul anyway. So plenty to share with you, but before going further, I do want to be clear. I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. As I record this video, it is 11:26 p.m. Central Time, Tuesday, September 10th, 2024. XRP is 53 cents and Bitcoin at $56,400. So technically a little bit in the red, but for most of the last 24 hours, realistically, we've mostly been moving sideways. There was a bit of a dip, just starting a few hours ago before I started recording this. Nothing particularly crazy. Nothing that crazily jumps out at me. Here's a crypto fear and greed index at 37 out of 100, so up a little bit, but still the market participants are in fear. I'll tell you who's not in fear are those splishy, splashy whales getting aquatic AF. And I want to highlight this because, and I've mentioned this fact before, but this is a brand new article from the Daily Huddle. And just recognize that, and there's a reason I'm covering this first, the whales are behaving in this way. And then I'm going to show you data from a macro analyst, and he shares a chart showing liquidity is increasing. So isn't it funny how you see the whales acting in a particular way as people are panic selling? And wouldn't you know it, just on cue, market starts to, we got to see it play out. But Q4, in all likelihood, I think it's going to be a lot better. And this is at a time when it just so happens to be the case, liquidity's experiencing an uptick, and at a time where we should expect it to. It just happens to be falling together. Well, color me surprised, except I'm not at all. And it's not because I know for sure what's going to happen. I'm telling you explicitly, I do not know for sure what's going to happen. I don't. But based on historic precedent and knowing that history rhymes with itself, I have strong suspicions, which is perfectly reasonable. And that's how I come to this, looking at historic data. That's a good way to come to reasonable conclusions about not what's certain, but what is perhaps more probable than not. And so the headline here, unfazed by the market. Whales accumulate over $10 billion in Bitcoin in just 6 months. New data from market intelligence platform Into the Block reveals that crypto whales have accumulated over $10 billion worth of Bitcoin during the last 6 months. Now, folks, you understand, I know I'm talking to people who are actually paying attention, but I just want to make sure there are always some people who are newer to crypto may not be aware. But the last 6 months, we've been trading sideways and down, and that's pretty much it, right? This has been testing people. It's been trying people. The lettuce hands are getting all washed up over this. They're getting washed out. And what have the whales been doing for that exact duration of time? What have they been doing? They're happy for this. They have been purchasing. Whales do not act like this at the top of markets. I've never seen it before. It has never happened in history. That is one thing to be aware of. That doesn't guarantee that we see some euphoric blast off to the upside, but isn't it reasonable to suppose that that's one more thing worth considering, which, you plop it in the category of, yeah, this is an argument for why we're probably going to go to the upside, because that's what you would typically expect, right? It's one more thing. Piece continues, and a new report into the block says that whales appear unworried by the downward price action as deep-pocketed investors holding between 100 and 1,000 Bitcoin have been steadily collecting tens of thousands of Bitcoin over the past several months. Quote, unfazed by the market, addresses holding between 100 and 1,000 Bitcoin have remained unaffected by recent market fluctuations, continuing to steadily accumulate over the past few months. These addresses now control 20.3% of the circulating supply, equivalent to 4.01 million Bitcoin, up from 3.82 million Bitcoin 6 months ago, reflecting a 5% increase. Think about that. The numbers are on your screen right there. As people have been getting more scared and the short-term holders have been panic selling, this particular class of investor is like, yeah, I'm going to buy more. Think about it. And then that's why when we had these drops like we had in the beginning part of August and the beginning part of September in particular, there were two notable drops about a month apart each. And what did the whales do? How have they been acting? Are they freaking out? And then understanding that XRP is a part of this. My God. XRP is going to substantially outperform Bitcoin by the end of this cycle. I firmly believe that to be the most probable outcome. By a lot. Not by a little. By a substantial margin. And, not surprising here, liquidity, my friends. Liquidity, liquidity, liquidity. Like, what drives these 4-year cycles, roughly 4-year cycles anyway? It is liquidity. It is not the Bitcoin halving. Saying it's the Bitcoin halving because it happens to be roughly every 4 years is as nonsensical as saying other things that happen roughly every 4 years, or exactly 4 years, are causing the market activity. Like the presidential election in the United States, that's every 4 years. Maybe it's that then. Or not, because that doesn't make any damn sense. And so here is a post from Julian Biddle, CFA. He is the head of macro research at Global Macro Investor, GMI. And he shared this chart on your screen, GMI Total Liquidity Index. And so he's talking about Bitcoin here, but to be clear, the asset class will be broadly treated the same way. It doesn't mean that every single coin is going to hit a new all-time high. I'm not talking about that. But if you're talking about liquidity flows, yeah. If it's going to Bitcoin, I mean, and then even more importantly, frankly, what about if you're talking about liquidity on a macro scale, just broadly speaking, increasing, right? As it's increasing, how do you think that's then treated? Well, again, I was talking about that at the outset of the video. We know how historically this plays out. It is allocated. Funds end up getting allocated. So here's what he wrote, though. He says, hang in there, bulls. It's felt like an eternity trapped in the boring zone, but there's finally some light at the end of the tunnel. Liquidity is on the rise again, and Bitcoin, being extremely sensitive to changes in liquidity conditions, has the potential to move explosively as fresh liquidity flows into the system. The macro environment is shifting. A major liquidity wave is now on the horizon, and when it hits, Bitcoin looks primed for a strong push higher in Q4. Patience is the name of the game now. Oh, color me surprised again. Wouldn't you know it? This is happening leading up to what is historically the best quarter for investing in the stock market and in crypto. Wouldn't you know it? So I sarcastically say, oh, color me surprised. I'm not surprised in the least. This is lining up so far in a way that you should expect it to, if you think that precedent matters historically. And I do. I find it interesting. Doesn't mean everything's going to be exactly the same. Most certainly not. But again, history rhymes with itself. That's why this matters. So I think XRP is going to just blast off ultimately. There's also this post. This is from Stock Money Lizards. And he said, hashtag Bitcoin, liquidity zones, resistant. I don't need to read the whole thing. Let me just sum this up for you. I just want to talk a little bit about potential short-term price action. He is warning that there is a chance that we could see Bitcoin go as low as $53,000. And he just was citing that a notable resistance level is perhaps as high as $60,000. So we're not out of September yet. September historically is very rocky. We've already been witnessing that. That shouldn't surprise anybody. It's the 10th. So, we may see a bit more turbulence yet, but just look forward to Q4. that's when I'm expecting us to have, well, let's just say a lot more fun than we're having right now in terms of price action. There's also this post from the blockchain backer. He shared this last night. And he's been talking about this a lot, and it's an interesting fact I wanted to share in case you missed this or hadn't heard this. He said, today marks, and this is, mind you, again, this is a post from last night, September 9th. He said, today marks the longest non-expansion for Bitcoin in the crypto market in history. It has been 143 days since the block reward halving. There has never been a time in history where the price of Bitcoin was lower than the halving date after 143 days. Stock market expansion equals key. Now that is spot on. Now, of course, just because that's the case, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen, and he's not making that argument, obviously. It doesn't mean that new records can't be set and then move to the upside. He's not saying that. But he is citing something that's fascinating. We are at this point where you think, okay, I mean, if it's going to go, it should probably go. Where's the stock market expansion? What's going on here? Well, that comes hand in hand also with liquidity very frequently. And so when he says stock market expansion is key, he's unquestionably correct. He's been beating that drum for the longest damn time. In fact, he's the one that really got the entire crypto space, broadly speaking, talking about the importance of seeing small cap stocks start to expand, because you've never seen an alt season without that. But, if that's going to happen, liquidity certainly is key on top of that. But yeah, he's hitting the nail on the head, and he's correct. And he also shared a few charts here I wanted to highlight. I'll put them on the screen briefly. If you want to pause just to look at them longer, go ahead and do that. But just this morning, he wrote, visual of the start of Fed rate cuts on September 18th, 2007. And so one of the key things that I think is worth noting here is that once the Fed cuts rates, and as I'm sure most of you are aware at this point, the last few times the Fed was cutting rates, not long after that, we did see some economic turbulence, let's say, right? Not that the cuts triggered that. I think that they were reactionary cuts, and then it was too late to do anything anyway. But it is the case that the last few times this has happened, indeed, it's not been so hot. But there are also a number of other examples, the 80s leading up to like even 1990, where there had been multiple rate cuts, and actually it wasn't some sort of bad omen that the market was going to crater, that the stock market was going to further move to the downside. So it's not a foregone conclusion. So even if it's more probable than not that, if you just look at the numbers, and I actually don't have this data in front of me, so I don't know which is the case, so whether it's typically the case that when you see a cut, it'd be worth looking into this though, but I don't know if it's the case that when you see a cut, if it's more likely than not historically that you do see a move to the downside shortly after or not. I would like to find that answer. I'm curious. So I can't answer that. I can just tell you that sometimes, for sure, yep, it's bad. It has been the last few times it's been bad. But you can have multiple times in a row where it's also not. So take that for what it's worth here. I'm just saying it's not a foregone conclusion. That's the broader point I'm making. But on top of that, even if the Fed does cut rates, which it seems like a virtual certainty at this point, it's probably about to happen. You can go on for like months and months. In fact, he shared this one. Here's a 2019 chart, and he says, he pointed right here, Fed first cut in 2019. Well, you can go on for months and months and months and see, this is the Dow Jones, you can see markets continue to tick on to the upside. And again, this is important even if you're in crypto, because there's that correlation in terms of performance between the stock market and the crypto asset class. And then he shared one more here. This is in the year 2000. So just because you get a rate cut, even if it is indeed the case that we're going to, in fairly short order, see a move to the downside, it doesn't mean we can't still have some sort of blow off top. That's a broader point that I wanted to make. There's also this post from chart analyst Mikey Bull Crypto, #altcoins. This is a real macro bottom indeed. Expansion phase is about to kick in. And this chart on your screen here is the crypto total market cap excluding top 10 dominance percent. So it's the dominance percent for the rest of the market for all the coins except for the top 10 coins by market cap. And look, again, it's just one of those things, because you can see the two previous cycles, history rhyming with itself. I will not be surprised to see a substantially higher percentage in terms of dominance. And look, I know XRP is not included in that because XRP is in the top 10 coins by market cap, but still, liquidity going to do what it's going to do, right? And if the market's going to go, it's going to go, and money will rotate. And on top of that, I'm sure that many of you are like me in the sense that, even if XRP is your favorite coin, and for me it actually is, it's my largest individual holding, I hold a ton of different coins. I hold a lot of coins. In fact, most of my coins are outside of the top 10 coins by market cap. So I'm excited for this. I think that a vast majority of my gains are going to be those coins outside of the top 10. And I'm not into like a ton of small and micro caps. Don't get me wrong. I'm mostly into large and mid caps, but still, the excitement should be there regardless. Because if we're going to see an alt season, we're going to see an alt season. And I think we are. I think that that's what's most probable. There's also this post from a charting guy. He was asked, any alts looking juicy for a 10x? And he named 3 coins, and one of them XRP. So, and that was on September 8th, mind you. So at this time when some people are saying, are terrified, obviously, calling for bear market, this or that, which is silly because we should expect September to be completely garbage in terms of price action when the market does what history tells you it should be doing. You shouldn't freak out. That's my opinion. Here he is, staying level-headed and saying, no, 10x, yeah, XRP is an easy one. And outside of that, he said very recently, he still stands by this, he thinks that the peak for XRP could be as high as $13. And that seems completely reasonable. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that certainly is safely grounded within the realm of reality. And that would be a massive increase even from the current price level. If that happens, that would be absolutely freaking gigantic. Here's a post from chart analyst Dr. Magic, and he said, the rotation that we are going to see from stock market will be one to remember. Below is charts of XRP priced against NVIDIA and ETH against NVIDIA. These setups are rare and don't come often. So you can see if you're looking at the screen, the top one is XRP priced against NVIDIA, a publicly traded company, and the bottom one is ETH priced against NVIDIA. Now, you might be wondering why the heck is XRP being priced against NVIDIA? Well, there's actually a pretty good reason for this. And it's just one more way of looking at the market. It's not like it's my very favorite chart, but it does make sense. It makes logical sense. I understand why he's doing it. See, NVIDIA, that's a tech stock, right? And so what we know is that, of course, as I've stated many times, even in this video, the stock market and the crypto asset class, they move in tandem, broadly speaking, not down to the second, the minute, the day, the week, the month necessarily, although many times on particular days, you can see big movements like March 2020 with the C19 stuff. I saw big movements on that stuff happens. We've even seen that in August and September. Okay, so you do see things lining up like that. But what lines up even more broadly speaking than just like the S&P 500 would be, for instance, the NASDAQ 100, the NDX. Because the NASDAQ 100, that's an index that is tech stock heavy, right? And so that index being tech stock heavy, that is treated very similar to the crypto asset class, which really isn't that surprising, right? Because when you're thinking about crypto, it's easy to think technology. When you're thinking about the NASDAQ 100, of course, you're thinking technology. And so what we find is that humans treat them about the same. And NVIDIA is a crucial aspect of this. That's the reason that he's pricing it against that. It's because they're in the same wheelhouse in a certain way. That's it. And so what you see is if you go back to 2017 when XRP had its biggest face-melting rally in history, XRP was priced very poorly against NVIDIA until it wasn't. It just rocketed to the upside. And then we've had this consolidation phase for almost 7 years at this point, and it has just been falling against NVIDIA as NVIDIA has been outperforming. But now we're at this point where it looks like perhaps it's indeed bottomed. And this is happening at a time where we've seen XRP bottom, presume at least to this point, bottom against Bitcoin and ETH. And you can look at all sorts of metrics like the relative strength index, Bollinger Bands, XRP dominance for the entire crypto asset class. It looks like it's bounced off of what is probably, though not certainly, a bottom for the market cycle. That's what it's looking like at this point. And that's the reason I say that is I'm seeing tons of analysts with high conviction that's the case. This is one more chart saying, yeah, that's what it's doing. We've seen this movie before. So it'll be interesting to see if this is indeed going to pop higher, but I just won't be surprised in the least. Folks, the liquidity wave, it's coming, and it's coming for XRP. It's coming for the asset class, but you better believe that XRP is absolutely a part of that, and I'm excited for it. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.